to a special edition of Stuck in My Mind podcast. I am your host, Wize, and today's guest is a leader who's walked both sides of performance, the external results and the internal costs. Andrew Oxley is the founder of the Oxley Group, an internationally recognized coach and speaker. He led a top sales team in the Fortune 500 by the time he was 27, but found himself asking, is this it? He built his coaching practice around helping leaders bridge that gap between drive and purpose, results and rest. If you're chasing success but feeling hollow inside, this conversation is for you. Let's welcome Andrew Oxley to Stuck in My Mind podcast.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on.
The pleasure's all mine. I'm excited for this conversation. So Andrew, what led you a top performing sales team at just 27 take take me back to that moment. What was the winning looking like for you back then? Like you're leader of a performance sales team at 27.
Yeah, it was a rat race. It really was, and I remember I was working 80 to 100 hours a week, and you know, so I had all the trappings of success. I love Barbara Bush's statement. She said the problem with most people is that they have a great lifestyle but no life. And so my friends saw me for these brief, intense periods. I didn't have time for relationships. And I really didn't know what to do in my life. I woke up one morning, and in Canada, I was living in Toronto at the time. And in Canada, the national newspaper is something called the Globe and Mail. It's sort of like the Wall Street Journal of Canada, kind of. And in the bottom right-hand corner, there's this little quip. It's called Your Morning Smile. And that particular morning, the morning smile was, the problem with the rat race is even if you win, you're still a rat. And I remember shaving that morning and thinking, I'm just going to be a big rat. That's all I'm going to be. I'm going to be a big fat rat sitting up here in Toronto. And I want my life to be something different than that. Now, I love the title of your podcast, by the way, Stuck in Your Mind podcast. Okay.
Thank you.
I did something that was really, really important, but I didn't understand it at the time. I actually cut that out, that little thing. The problem with the rat race is even if you win, and I actually still have a picture of it, and I carried it in my wallet, and I didn't quit my job. I just kept looking at it, going, how do I change my life? How do I change my life? How do I change my life? And I didn't know how to change my life, but I kept asking the question. And the reason I said it was so important was that I think what happens so many times with leaders that I interact with, and oftentimes in my own life, is that we run across a question that we don't know the answer to, and we just get busy with what we do know. And we say, well, I'll think about that later. But if you can write it down, and where it'll pop up over and over and over again and say, that's what I want. I don't know how to get it. I don't know how to do it, but that's what I want. It's the questions you don't have the answers to that will move you further, faster. But we sort of fall asleep and we just say, well, I don't know how to solve that, so I just got to get busy with what I do know. And so that was the genesis of the change.
Mm-hmm.
And then it took me 18 months to plot my exit. And I didn't even know what I was going to do. I went into my boss's office and said, I'm quitting. And he's like, well, where are you going? I'm like, I don't know. I'm going skiing. And I had to create some space in my life to find out what I wanted to do. And then I came up with the idea of helping people, helping leaders discover how to balance purpose, drive, and success and results, because I was going to come at it from an operational frame, not a training frame.
So what limitations did you see in traditional climb the ladder leadership models?
Well, I was measuring my success by the bottom line and how much money we brought in. And I had this idea that if I invested money or spent money on support staff, it was going to lower my take home. And one of the things that you, as an entrepreneur, you have to recognize, there's a difference between an expense and an investment. Investments make you more money in the future, and expenses lower the bottom line. And we confuse those two things quite often. And we're unwilling to make the investments that are necessary to improve our results over the long term.
Yeah, that was something when I started my podcast. I started with a rinky dink. I shouldn't even say rinky, but a little studio for Amazon for $160, and it did the job.
Yeah.
But then when I decided that this is something that I was passionate about, that I love doing, I started investing in quality mic, invested in the proper equipment, because I felt the people who were listening to the show and to the podcast, it was important that I gave them quality because they were investing their time with.
Without question.
So
Yeah.
that was something important for me, was to invest in myself and invest in learning about audio, video, all these things that I had no clue about. But since I had fell in love with podcasting, it was like, I'm investing in myself. This is something that I feel is necessary, and it's been fruitful for me. I've have some wonderful conversations. I've been able to build a pretty successful podcast, and I'm just having a great time doing it.
That's fantastic. That's good.
So how did that realization lead you to find the Oxley Group?
Well, so I decided I was going to immigrate to the U.S. because I was living in Canada at the time, right? And as I wanted to start a business, I was actually living in Whistler, British Columbia, as I was trying to figure all this out. And I think I was the only person in Whistler that lived there that was reading the Wall Street Journal, trying to figure out what am I going to do, and a lot of the businesses I was looking at I was like, I feel like I'm going to recreate the same problems that I experienced, and so I hit upon the idea. Well, why don't I try to bring something different to leadership development? Why don't I bring an operational frame? And so I didn't know how different it was at the time, but what we started doing was going into companies and saying, okay, so you say you want to improve your leaders. Why? Like, what operational results would change if your leaders were more effective? And one of the first companies we did this with was Progressive Insurance in Georgia. And I got the opportunity to speak to the head of claims for Progressive in Georgia. His name was Eric Neely, and uh, Eric Eric had some very specific metrics. I always joke that Progressive, I think they measure more stuff than NASA, and so they had some very specific metrics, and he'd lead all these different things that had to change. I'm like, which one has to change fastest and first? And so we narrowed in on one particular metric. And within a 6-month period, we made so much change in that particular area that spilled over positively into other areas. So the leaders just didn't become more effective. They actually, better leaders, like, subjectively doing all the things we think leaders should do. It impacted the bottom line, which got a lot of attention across Progressive, and led to, probably a 20 plus year relationship with that organization in terms of the work that we do with them.
Awesome. So you've talked about a 5-step framework to help leaders go from effective to exceptional. What are those steps at a high level?
Yeah, so I probably won't do justice to all of them in a very short period of time, but the first thing is vision, and what are you trying to accomplish? And I think the problem so often with leaders is that either they're passionate but they can't get other people to be passionate, or they're not even passionate. I think it's hard to sell something you don't believe in yourself, right? So if I don't have passion, how am I ever going to get anybody else excited about what's happening? And I think we confuse vision with some thing that the CEO has to go off and set. And vision can be very personal. It can be, if you have a group of 2 or 3 people you're leading, if you have a group of 100 people you're leading, if you have a large organization, the vision should resonate with them. And one of the things we like to say is it should right some wrong that resonates with the people that you're looking to engage. So something that you're passionate about, and it should be some ideal you're striving for. It shouldn't be easily achievable. Visions are sort of like the horizon. It's a mental construct that we've invented to explain something in the physical world, and visions are like that. You never get to the horizon. It always progresses out in front of you, and visions are the same way. So you got to have a vision, and people. So that sounds fluffy to people, but what are you moving towards? I mean, no one would go on a journey if they didn't have a destination. And while it's true you should have goals, there's a big difference between goals and a vision. if all you have is goals for your people, what will happen eventually is they'll realize that no matter how hard they work and no matter how many goals they achieve, you always want more. And at some point, they're going to go, "Wait, this is a dumb game. Maybe I should have just given up a couple of years ago and settled for less because no matter how hard I work, it's never enough." So, but a vision is something that stirs the human soul. So you got to have that first of all. You got to have a vision, and then you have to have clarity with your team. You have to have clarity in terms of, what it is that you want them to do to move forward. Clarity is not a common ingredient, I have found. Uh, I mean, I always know what I mean. So clearly, I think I'm clear, but I go into organizations all the time and the leaders, think they've been very clear. And I talk to the people they're working with and they have no, they do not have that clarity in any way, shape or form. So that's the second thing. You got to know where you're going. You have to have the ability to communicate that effectively with your team. And then you have to be able to create a culture of accountability on your team. And the reason I say a culture of accountability rather than hold people accountable is you really can't hold anyone accountable. People have too many options. Holding people accountable involves the stick. Like I'm going to
Discipline, yeah.
discipline you and if that worked well ever, which maybe it did years ago, it doesn't work well today. I mean, as many of my leaders I coach say, young people today, they're just not as engaged as we were. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure our parents said the same thing about us. We're now there are some differences in the younger generation, but you have to be able to create a culture where people are committed, they know what they're supposed to be doing, and there's accountability, not just directionally up and down, but horizontally within the organization. It's much easier for a peer to hold another peer accountable than for a boss to hold that person accountable. So you got to have vision, you have to have clarity, you have to have the ability to create a culture of accountability, and then you have to have the ability to go out and execute as a high performance team. And most teams we work with are not high performance teams. They're a collection of individuals that occasionally share some goals. We're blaming this person for this and that person for that. And then finally, you have to have people embrace change, not just tolerate it. Because no matter how good you are going to have to change. So we have a process we use with leaders that encompasses all these steps, and it's plan, execute, measure, learn. So you plan, you execute, you measure what happened, and then you learn from it. And the faster you can spin that wheel, the more you will grow as a leader, as an organization, as a team, and your ability to get better results.
Yeah, and you would think you would want, as an organization, to have all your leaders basically kind of be on the same message, how to deliver the same message, and in the same way. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So how do you coach leaders to build high performance teams ones that hit the KPIs without draining energy? Like, how do you get them to get there without overworking them and getting them to not want to do the job?
Yeah, and I think that it starts with trust. It starts with whether I trust people. I love one of the interviews I saw one time with some Navy SEALs, and you would think pretty high performing team, right? And they actually were asked, well, what's the most important element you look for in a team member? And they said trust. They would take someone they trust over someone who's a better soldier, a better sniper, a better, more physically, capable. Trust is the elemental concept we need to grasp a hold of first. And trust is not a black and white thing, right? I can't say I trust this person or I don't trust them. Trust them with what? I might trust them, with one thing. Like I had a CEO tell me one time. He says, I would. He had a particular guy in his company. It's a big company. He said I would trust him with $1 million that he would not steal one penny. If I gave him $1 million cash and I said, hold this for me for a week, I'd know 1 week later, that $1 million would be exactly where it was supposed to be. He said, but I wouldn't trust him with a secret, which is interesting, right? So he'd trust him with the cash, but he wouldn't trust him with a secret because he knows that this guy loves to gossip, right? And so if he told him something, he's going to go tell everybody about it, but he trusts him with $1 million. So I use that illustration to think trust is not black and white. It's not like you trust people or you don't trust them. What do I trust them with? And since everybody believes they're trustworthy, I've never met anybody who thinks they're not, by the way. Although I've met lots of people that don't trust other people who think they're trustworthy.
Yeah.
So how do we build trust? First of all, when we have to recognize that it's not an either or. It's depends. Do I trust this person enough to tell them what they need to hear? Do I trust them enough to give them negative feedback that would help them progress? Or do I think it's not worth I'm going to get in an argument. It's not worth it, right? So without trust, you can't have what we call constructive conflict, which is conflict that moves the organization forward.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
So now conflict can be destructive or constructive. Without trust, it can't be constructive. So those are the two elemental things. Trust precedes constructive conflict. Constructive conflict precedes accountability in the organization. Accountability precedes results. So that's how you build the high performance team.
Okay. Awesome. So what's the shift leaders need to make between being in the weeds and being strategic?
Yeah, and that strategy is this misunderstood term, right? Because we tend to think of it as some high end thing that the CEO's strategic, but everybody has some element of strategy or being strategic in their job, and you could almost replace the word proactive with strategy in many positions, right? It's when you're acting on problems before they act upon you. That would be being reactive. So. I'll go back to my experience at Train before I started this business. The reason I was working 80 to 100 hours a week was I was way too busy to slow down and solve some of the problems that were causing me to work 80 to 100 hours a week. I didn't have time to solve the problems. So I often say, when we work with people, I said, if you have time to work with me, you don't need my help. Everybody who needs help with leadership is probably too busy already. They've got way too much to do. And what they need to start identifying is, what are the things that I really need to be doing? And what are the things that my team needs to be more engaged in? Now, that doesn't solve the problem of whether the team can do it, but it creates a target for what we need to be perhaps more proactive on. What are the problems that tend to recur? And if I were to invest, going back to that word invest, time on those, then that would be the things that would move me further, faster. So the question we ask leaders is this: if I created an hour in your day, like magically, like it's like a Disney little pixie dust thing, and I created an extra hour in your day, where would you invest it that would move the organization further, faster? Not spend it. So if they're like, well, I'd catch up on emails. No, that's not moving you further, faster. I guarantee you those emails will arrive tomorrow again. So I'm not asking you how would you catch up. Where would you invest the time that would move you further, faster? That's that. When we think of being strategic in most positions, that's really what we're focused on.
What are the biggest stumbling blocks you see in leaders when they're trying to scale?
Oh gosh, well, it depends where they are in the scaling process, right? But we have a model we use with entrepreneurs. It's called the 7 stages of entrepreneurial freedom, or CEO freedom. And so there are specific stages you go through, and between each stage, there's a lot of turbulence. So what I see with a lot of leaders is they start to scale, but the way that they scale, their bottom line either doesn't go up or it actually decreases. But they get more people on the payroll. And after a while, they like, this was a whole lot more fun when I had fewer people working for me. I should just go back to a time when it was simpler. And um, the problem with uh, shedding people and getting smaller is that your highest performing people are almost always attracted to a growing organization. So you will tend to shed your what we call your A players, your top performing people as you get smaller, but you will retain quite often the people who don't want to grow. And so that can be problematic. Now, it doesn't have to be that way. Of course, you could have the capacity to retain A players as you get smaller. But this turbulence that the organizations go through is that you have to recognize that as you grow, there will be turbulence. But adding more people doesn't make the organization less complex. It actually makes it way more complex. Like going from 5 people to 10 doesn't double the complexity in the organization. It goes up exponentially, right? So things become more complex. And the only way to return things to a state of simplicity is to look at what's causing the complexity in the first place. So we got to look at what are the processes that we need to put in place that will facilitate open, honest dialogue amongst the team so that we can actually accomplish more, because adding people is not always the answer.
So how do you help leaders maintain alignment, their values, purpose, and results as they grow?
Yeah, well, that's the leader's job, right? The leader's got to stay completely connected to that. Why are they doing this in the first place? Like, why is this important to them? And the why it's important to them has to resonate with the people they're seeking to lead. So if you're like, well, I'm doing this so I can exit and get a big payout. Well, that's probably not going to resonate with your team. So don't share that with them. So what are you trying to create that would resonate with them, right? Um, and you mentioned values. We have this thing exercise we do with leaders, and we say, you don't write your values, you discover them, because they're already there. Like, everybody has values. Even people you think don't have value, they absolutely have values. You may not agree with their values, but they have values. So when you discover your values and you sort of say, this is what's important to us, what most organizations do is then they write it up on a little plaque and they put it up on the wall, and they're like, there's our values. I have there's a preacher here in Atlanta, his name's Andy Stanley. He has this great saying. He says, what happens down the hall will always beat what's hanging on the wall. And so, you can hang it on the wall, but it doesn't really matter what's hanging on the wall. It matters what's happening down the hall. So you have to figure out, how do we live those values? So one of the things we ask leaders to do is, if one of your key values, for example, is teamwork, well, what does that mean? Well, we should act as a team. Well, what does that mean? Like, what specifically in this job, what if we were to live that value, what are the behaviors that we should see, and what are the behaviors we don't want to see? Here's something that your listeners can listen to. You don't coach on values. You coach on behaviors reference to values. So you coach on the behavior that you want, but you always tie it back to the value. So when you tie the behavior back to the value, people go, oh, that's what. So when we talk about teamwork, that's what they mean. We don't want to be doing this. We do need to be doing this. I think what we try to do as leaders, so often we try to create all these rules, and we need it in the employee handbook. We got to have all, and you really don't. If you've got core values that are core to who you are as an organization, just tie the feedback back to the core value. And always, when you're coaching, say, the reason this is important is because one of our core values is teamwork. And this is what that looks like. And they're like, okay, so when we talk about teamwork, this is one of the things we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Because even if you put it in the handbook, right? Not necessarily everybody's going to read the handbook, and not.
Yeah.
So it's the truth. Not everyone's
Yeah.
going to read the
No
handbook.
one's going to read it.
So it's important that your leaders, they're all consistent with the message. It's important that they're all like, this is what these are our values, but this is how we want it done, and that they're all on the same page with delivering that message to whoever they're working with.
Yeah, for without question, it is a um, that consistency is critical. And you mentioned the handbook. Yeah, the only really reason we have a handbook is so that when we fire people, we can say it's in the handbook.
And
Well, that is not what we're trying to do when we're giving feedback. We're not trying to fire people. We're trying to grow people, retain them, uh, correct them, perhaps. But if the purpose is to get rid of somebody, well, then that's not really what we're looking for here. Although it is an unfortunate circumstance you will find yourself in as a leader.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So what's next for the Oxley Group? New programs, books, or impact models?
Yeah, so we are actually in a pretty heavy growth phase as an organization. We're hiring new coaches. We're doing podcasts like this to expand our reach within the entrepreneurial space. And we work with other organizations too that aren't necessarily entrepreneur led. But we are actually growing our leadership practice. So we have three levels of engagement we have with clients. We do cohort based training where organizations can send 1 to 3 people through our leadership process, which takes 4 months. It's a very low engagement time per week, but lasts longer because that's the way people change. They don't change. You can't microwave leadership. You got to sort of slow cook it. Um, and so we do that. We also do some individual coaching, and then we do also strategic coaching with organizations as well that are looking to grow. So we're in a pretty heavy growth phase right now because the market is pulling us. We got a lot of leaders who are saying the environment we're leading in today is so radically different since COVID.
Yeah.
We literally packed about 10 years of change into about 3 months after COVID. It's just
Mhm.
like the employee base is radically different, and it's not just young people. Those demands for better led organizations are cascading up through the generations, and people are saying, but why do I have to be in the rat race?
Yeah.
Um, and so you know I love the quote says the problem with complaining about young people today is it's like yelling at the wind. It doesn't change the wind, and you're just going to end up exhausted. Right. So, young people are going to make up the majority of your workforce.
Mhm.
So we have to learn how to lead them in a way that is not, it doesn't keep them in maybe in behaviors that are not productive or not appropriate, but it allows us to grow them because they need to learn things about what they need to do differently. But we have to do it in a way that engages them, not that pushes them away.
Yeah, of course, because me and you definitely come from a different time, and so we were raised differently, and so the way you communicate with them is completely different from where the way they were communicated or from when we were coming up. Because I'll be 50 next year, so yeah, it's just been it's a different time, and again, it's us being older and everything need to learn how to communicate with them better and approach them in a manner where they're accustomed to and where they feel like, okay, yeah, I feel appreciated, and I thank you for being to be for being able to learn how to communicate with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you help leaders sustain momentum without burning out?
Yeah, burnout's a big thing. And I was actually talking to someone just about this the other day. And the opposite of burnout, of course, is passion, right?
Mhm.
People who are passionate don't typically burn out. And, a lot of times leaders say, well, how do you get work life balance? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know that that's really a thing. Um, you know, um, there's an old saying, balanced people don't change the world, so I think what we probably should say is that we want to, have our life full of things that we are passionate about.
Mhm.
Now, passion is actually a little elusive for people because as we get older, we like to be comfortable. Well, that's the exact opposite of passion, when you really think about it. Like if you think about the times when you felt the most alive in your life, right? If I
When
ask
you're
people that, they say, "Well, I'm just feel a little burned out and I don't have any passion." I'm like, "Well, tell me about a time when you felt really alive." And they're like, "Well, like when I was in college, when I was first married, when we had our first house, when we had our kids." And I'm like, yeah, did you feel like it was like super exciting at the time, or was it like just like, you're just hanging on by your fingernails, you know? And they're like, yeah, it probably wasn't that exciting at the time, but they would love to go back to that time, right? Well, what all those things have in common is we were growing.
Hmm.
And when you're growing, you feel more alive. And when you're when you're burned out, right? When you have no passion, you've stopped growing typically. Now, I'm not saying you're not working damn hard. Don't get me wrong. You're probably working really hard,
Absolutely.
but you're not growing. You don't feel like it's the same crap every day. Like, so I don't think what burns out leaders is not having problems. What burns out leaders is having the same problems over and over and over again, right? And what we want is new problems. Now, I'm going to say something, it's a bit of a cliche. It sort of pisses leaders off when I say to them. I say, you know, like when they say, when will I get a new problem? I'm like, when you learn the lesson that this problem is here to teach you. And they're like, what are you, some sort of like sage? And I'm like, no. But the reason you keep getting the same problem over and over is you've not learned the lesson. When you learn this lesson, when you figure out how to solve this problem, I don't want to be, you know, depressing, but you'll get a bigger problem. But that's what happens in life, right? If you think back, well, to when you were really young, like when you were like in high school, did you had problems then, right?
Yeah.
Now you think back now and you think, yeah, they really weren't that big, you
Mhm.
know. I always joke that I had three problems in high school. I had no money, no car, and no girlfriend. Uh, you know, I've since figured out they were all connected. I
Yeah.
could have got a job and got a car. Maybe I could have got a girlfriend, you know, I mean, maybe not, but I think that, you know, we can look back in our life and we can see a pattern of positive growth, and our problems didn't get smaller. They got bigger, but there's more of us there to deal with the problems. But if you don't grow, then the problems just become oppressive. And that's where burnout comes from. So, what I would challenge your listeners to do is say, what am I passionate about in my life? Like what's something new that I could do? Now don't go throw stuff out that's important to you, but
Mhm.
like I'm not suggesting you go and change everything, but like where's an area that I can engage in a pattern of positive growth? Because when you're growing, you feel alive. And the reason you feel burned out, I believe, is you've lost passion. Um, so the only way to get it back is to figure out not what do I know I can get, but what do I not know that I can grow and learn. And that's what I did in Toronto. I wrote down that question. How do I change my life? How do I not be on the rat wheel, the hamster wheel, you know?
Yeah.
Um, I didn't know how to do it. But the purpose of setting a goal isn't to achieve the goal, it's to learn what is necessary to achieve the goal. So that was a long answer to a short question.
So, in a world of constant change, how does a leader stay grounded and clear?
Yeah. Wow. Well, I think the first thing is to spend a little bit of time not doing. You know, I think we get busy doing, and I think we need some thinking. You know, you obviously have a passion for podcasting.
Mhm.
Your listeners are listening to this podcast. You should be listening to different voices and different ways of thinking. I think we all get in our own little echo chamber, whether it be through you know, politics or the way we're seeing our lives, and we don't listen to diverse voices. We listen to the voices that tell us what we need to hear. Now, I have a this analogy I use. If you and I are very similar, and we have the same problems and stuff, and I come to you and I say, I got this problem, and you're like, I know, I got the same problem too, and we're like, it's, you know, so hard. You be a very talented person, but you can't help me because you've got the same problem. We see the world the same way. Now, what I need to do is go find somebody who's solved that problem or see things differently. And they'll probably say, well, actually, you know why you're struggling? It's you need to do this differently.
Mm.
And I might go, if I'm not careful, I'll go, they don't get it. They don't understand me. No, you understand me. Will understands me, right? Uh, I'll go back and talk to Will because he gets me. You know, we call this seeking the cold comfort of validation. You validated the way I saw the world. I got to go find people who see the world differently. Now you can read books, you can listen to
Mhm.
podcasts, you can listen to audio, you can do all sorts of things. Find people. Rarely are we walking down a path that no one's walked down.
Right.
Find somebody who's walked ahead of us, and you know this, like, any area of your life you've been successful in, if someone came to you, how do I do that? It's probably not that complicated. It's about doing really boring things over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And they're like, but we want the shiny thing. We want the magic bullet, the thing that'll cut. And there are very few shortcuts in life. Now we see people on social media who are fabulously successful, and we think, oh, it can be. Well, it can be, but they really are the exception. They're not the rule. So for most of us, we just got to plug away.
No, because people like, even with the podcast, right? It took me time to build it up. It took me because I wasn't in media. I didn't do this for a living, so I had to improve. I had to learn and develop and grow to get
Mhm.
it to where it's at now. It didn't instantly happen, and so when people think that, oh, I'm just gonna do it, and no, like a lot of these celebrities, yeah, they start podcasts, but they have a fan base, so yeah,
Yeah.
so of course their listenership is higher. I had I'm coming into a lane that is not my niche. I don't,
Mhm.
and so being able to have these discussions and me and at the beginning I felt very selfish because I was enjoying these conversations and I was learning so much. But at the end of the day, I'm sharing the content. So it's not like I'm hoarding the information. I'm having all these wonderful conversations and people are listening to them, people are learning from them. So I'm getting so much out of this, and I've grown and learned and developed so many different skills and gotten so many things accomplished in these 5 years since the pandemic and starting my podcast that it's been an amazing journey. Like, but it, like you said, it's me constantly growing and learning and evolving and changing the format of the podcast and doing this and adding this section and do so it's grown to the fact where now I've been able to minimize how much time I spend on developing the show because now I've built the system. I've learned how to. All right, this is what I need to do to get this done. It's something that would take me 2, 3, 4 hours now takes me 30 minutes
Yeah,
because I've I've built the system and I've learned how this is how it's gonna flow.
that's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, it's been great doing this. So what legacy do you want leaders you coach to carry on?
Yeah, I think that the thing that I love most actually is when people say, "I'm enjoying my life more." You know, um, that's what I was missing in Toronto. I mean, I had a great life. Don't get me wrong, but I had great friends and everything. But I have a great, like what I said, I have a great life. I had a great lifestyle. Um, I want people to live their life to the fullest. Like, we're only here for so long, right? And
Mhm.
I don't think we were just put here to grind and and just sort of, survive to fight another day. I want people to feel fully alive. And I think sometimes we're sold this bill of goods that either you're going to be commercially successful or you're going to live a life of passion and purpose. And I mean, I can tell you, when you talk to people who are truly successful, I mean, truly successful, that's not true. They're not just grinding every day and feeling drained at the end of the day. That you should feel excited at the end of the day, like what I was able to accomplish today and what I was able to do. So the legacy I want for leaders is that I want them, when they arrive home at the end of the day, I want there to be and like more there for the people they truly love. And I think what happens a lot of times, they arrive home at the end of the day and they're exhausted. And for the people they truly love, they don't get the best of that particular leader because they're just exhausted. So that's the legacy I want. I want them to go home and be like, I'm not exhausted. I'm energized. I'm passionate about the way I'm living my life. Earl Nightingale had this great quote. I often use it, and he was like built a huge personal development
Mhm.
empire.
Yeah.
And he said the problem with most people is that they sleepwalk through life, hoping to make it safely to death. Um, And I don't want people to sleepwalk through life. I don't want to sleepwalk through life. I don't want anybody I engage with to sleepwalk through life. And leaders have the capacity to impact the quality of life of a ton of people, both at work, at home. And so, you think when you're sleepwalking through life, you're having that impact on other people too. When you live with passion, you have that impact on others.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So, what's one question every aspiring leader should ask themselves daily?
Yeah. Um, um, there are so many, but let me think if I can give you one here for a minute. Because there's some very obvious ones like
Of course.
what should I start? What should I stop? What should I modify doing? Um, I think the question that took me up the fastest was somebody said to me one time, they said that the amount of progress you make in your life will be directly proportional to the amount of honesty you can accept about yourself.
Mm,
So if you spin that around into a question is, who in my life speaks the truth to me with love? Like who can I ask, like, how am I doing? What do I need to do differently? How do you how am I coming across to people? I mean, it's hard to see how you come across because you're like inside the box.
yeah.
It's hard to see the outside of the box from inside. So, who can you go to for feedback, for insight that will accelerate you? And when you ask for feedback, there's only one of two responses you should have. It's either thank you or tell me more. If I ask you for feedback and you give me feedback and I'm like, well, the reason I do that is because you're just going to say, oh, so I know the game we're playing now. Oxley said he wanted feedback, but he really didn't want feedback. He just wanted me to validate him. So
No.
that's what I'll do next time.
Yeah. No. It's funny that you said because there's something I'm doing and I sent it out to some of my friends because I honestly wanted their feedback. I wanted their opinion on it, and I got some great responses and stuff like that. And it wasn't for validation. I just honestly wanted to know what they thought about the plan and where could I shift and make things better. And from all the responses that I've gotten so far, there's just been positive. So I'm going to continue along with that plan and that path. But it's yeah. When I reach out to my friends, I honestly want feedback. I need them to be honest.
Yeah. And the challenge quite often is that when you get positive feedback, the challenge is is it all positive or is there we talked about trust earlier. Sometimes it's hard to give people feedback, like, because most of it's positive, but
Mhm.
I was talking to this one leader one time and I asked him, I said, so who gives you candid feedback? And he told me who it was. And I'm like, and I knew this leader, right? And I said, he's just like you. Like, he's just like you. And he said, well, that's why we get along. I'm like, so when you ask him for feedback, he's going to validate you because he sees the world the way you do. So who can you, when you, a lot of times we're married to people who will give us candid feedback, right?
Oh yeah, my wife has no problem.
Yeah.
She
And
has
that's
no problem voicing, but it's and she doesn't see the world. She like we don't see the world the same. Like we
right.
see it differently, and so her feedback can be brutally honest.
Yeah. 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 And that's what we need. Well, I love Jack Welch. He said, aim for candor, not brutal honesty, right?
Yeah,
Candor is when you speak the truth with love. And the thing is, I'm sure it's true with your wife, when people who are, core in our life, we know they're coming from a place of wanting to help,
yeah,
right? So, but you have to have those people in your life that will speak the truth to you with love. And that they want the best for you. But too often leaders surround themselves and they ask their direct reports, how am I
listen,
doing? Their direct reports say, you're awesome. And that does not mean you're awesome, of course, right?
yeah,
So if all you hear is positive feedback, then either you're not doing anything new, or they're not telling you the truth, right? There's got to be things you can change and do differently. Now you could be amazing in your job. I know people who have been in their jobs for so long, they're rock stars and they love their jobs,
Yeah.
and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with. We need those people in organizations, right?
Mhm.
But if you're doing new things and you're trying new things, you're probably having areas where you can improve and do better.
And that's why I make sure I connect with people that I know are excelling in something that I'm lacking,
Right.
and I'll go learn from them and communicate with them and be like, "Hey, listen, I need work on this." And then if there's something I know that they need help with, I return the favor. So it's been great to network and build those relationships with people, because again, there's so much that I don't know, and
Right.
it's I've been blessed to connect with people that have solutions or have answers to questions that I have. And so yeah, it's I've loved the fact that I've been able to grow and develop with the podcast and with everything I'm learning, and just it's been amazing.
Yeah, I can imagine you talk to a lot of different people,
Yeah.
a lot of different insights, and talk about diverse voices, so that you know, you can see different perspectives on things.
So, Andrew, we've come to the part of the show where you're gonna get the solo screen and you get to plug away and let everybody know where they can find you and everything. So here we
Yeah,
go.
yeah. Well, listen, it's been great to be on here, and I learned a long time ago. One of my first mentors said to me, "Stop worrying about where your next client's coming from, and serve people." And so that we've been doing that for a long time now. And one of the things we do is we do a workshop, leadership workshop. You can come on the workshop. Hopefully, you get ton of great material. So if you go to transformingresults.com, that's transformingresults.com, there's a button on there that says free workshop. If you enroll in the free workshop, we'll send you a bunch of free gifts. Why do we do that? Because my mission, as you can gather from our conversation, isn't just to build a business, it's to build value with people. And whether you do work with us or not in the future, it doesn't matter. What matters is that we deliver value to you. And if you're someone who wants to know more after that, then obviously we'd love to talk to you. But that free workshop is called the Leadership Blueprint Workshop, where we help you create a blueprint that will take you from where you are to where you truly like to be.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew, for being a guest. I greatly appreciate it. Don't leave just yet. Let me close out the show. But thank you so much, man. I greatly appreciate you being a guest.
I enjoyed speaking with you. Thanks so much.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. But again, don't leave just yet. Let me
I
close
will
it
not.
out and we'll chat a little bit off the air. But this is a wonderful conversation. Thank you. All right, everybody. Another great episode. This was awesome. I loved it. Thanks again to Andrew Oxley for coming through. If Andrew's words landed for you, go check out andrewoxley.com and learn more about his programs and coaching. And if you know a leader who's hustling themselves into burnout, share this episode with them. It might be the reset they need. Stay intentional, stay human, stay wise. You know, your boy Wize does it. Peace out.